I never thought I'd be that guy, the one writing about getting cheated on. But here I am. My name's Jake, I'm 28, and up until a few weeks ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Emily and I have been together for 5 years. 5 solid years. We met through mutual friends, hit it off instantly, and everything just clicked. We had good communication, or at least I thought we did. We had plans for the future. I even thought about proposing. But none of that mattered in the end. It started small, little things I barely noticed at first. Her phone used to be just there lying around. But suddenly, it was always in her hand, or flipped over on the table like it was hiding something from me. She started staying late at work, disappearing on weekends. I'd ask her about it, and every time she'd get defensive. I told myself I was overthinking it. I mean, I trusted her. We've been solid for 5 years. Why would she lie? But deep down, something fell off. The late nights became more frequent. The weekends away turned into vague excuses. I started noticing how she'd glance at her phone with a quick smile once she didn't share with me anymore. I wanted to believe everything was fine, that we were just going through a phase. But the distance between us was growing, and I couldn't ignore it. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Every relationship has rough patches, right? Maybe she was just stressed from work, or maybe I was being too sensitive. But no matter how much I tried to shake it, the doubt lingered. The trust we had built over 5 years felt like it was slowly crumbling, and I didn't know how to fix it. I remember one evening, we were sitting on the couch, watching one of our favorite shows. I reached over to hold her hand like I always did, but she pulled away, pretending to adjust the blanket. It was such a small gesture, but it felt like a punch to the gut. That's when I realized something had changed between us, something I couldn't ignore any longer. The signs were there, but I refused to see them. I clung to the idea that we were still the same couple who laughed at inside jokes and dreamed about the future. But the truth was, Emily was slipping away, and I was left grasping at memories of what we used to be. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to face the possibility that the woman I loved was hiding something from me. But as much as I tried to deny it, the cracks in our relationship were becoming impossible to ignore. Looking back, I realized I was living in denial. I wanted to believe in the illusion of our perfect relationship because the alternative was too painful to consider. But sometimes, love blinds you to the truth, and by the time you see it, it's already too late. This is where everything started to unravel. But at that moment, I still held on to hope that we could fix things. That maybe, just maybe, I was wrong about everything. But deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. It wasn't just one thing that tipped me over the edge. It was everything piling up, piece by piece, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. The late nights at work, the sudden weekends where she'd vanish without solid explanations, the way she guarded her phone like it was a lifeline, it all started to feel like too much. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was overthinking things, but that nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't let go. It was like this constant weight pressing on my chest, reminding me that something was off. I tried to push it down, to give her the benefit of the doubt, but eventually, the doubt was all I had. The breaking point came on a Friday night. Emily told me she was going to a friend's house, someone from work I'd never met, which was already a little weird. She left around 7 p.m., and I didn't think much of it at first. I figured she'd be back by 11 or midnight at the latest. But as the hours dragged on, something felt wrong. Midnight came and went, and there was no sign of her. I texted her, asking if everything was okay, and got no response. I called straight to voicemail. I tried to convince myself her phone had died or she was just having too much fun to check it, but the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. By the time 2 a.m. rolled around, I was pacing the apartment, my mind racing with every worst-case scenario imaginable. When she finally walked through the door, looking tired but oddly cheerful, I felt this mix of relief and frustration bubbling inside me. I wanted to ask her where she'd been, why she hadn't answered her phone, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I forced a smile and asked, "Hey, everything okay?" She gave me a quick, dismissive answer, something about losing track of time and her phone dying. Her story didn't sit right, but I didn't push it. Not yet. I just nodded and went to bed, but sleep was impossible. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every suspicious moment from the past few months like a broken record. The next morning, things felt different. She acted like nothing had happened, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I watched her closely, how she avoided eye contact, how she kept her phone within arm's reach at all times. I felt like I was going crazy, trapped in this limbo between trusting her and knowing deep down that something wasn't right. It's a strange kind of torture, suspecting the person you love is lying to you, but having no concrete proof. I didn't want to be the guy who snooped through his girlfriend's phone, but the doubt was eating me alive. It wasn't until a few days later that I finally caved. She was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I stared at it, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew it was wrong. I knew if I opened it, there was no going back. But curiosity and fear got the better of me. I picked it up, my hands shaking, and unlocked it. That's when my world shattered. The first thing I saw was a text from someone named Tom. I didn't recognize the name, but the message was clear enough. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. My stomach dropped. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I scrolled through the conversation, hoping, praying for some kind of explanation, some sign that this wasn't what it looked like. But there it was, in black and white, flirty messages, heart emojis, plans to meet up. It was undeniable. I sat there, staring at the screen, my mind racing. I felt a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could she do this to me? After everything we'd been through, after 5 years together, how could she betray me like this? I felt like I didn't even know her anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I was going to marry, was having an affair right under my nose. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to throw her phone across the room, to scream and demand answers. But instead, I just sat there. I felt like I was outside of my own body, watching this nightmare unfold from a distance. The sound of the shower turning off snapped me back to reality. I quickly set her phone back down and tried to compose myself, but my heart was racing and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. When she walked out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel and humming to herself, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I held up her phone, my voice trembling as I asked, "Who's Tom?" The color drained from her face. For a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights, panicked and guilty. But then, almost instantly, she tried to play it cool, like she could talk her way out of this. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try to lie at first. Instead, she laughed, this nervous, high-pitched laugh that sent chills down my spine. "It's not what it looks like," she said, her voice shaky, but trying to sound confident. "I'm just helping him practice flirting. He's bad at talking to women." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to admit she was joking. But she didn't. She was dead serious. I held up the phone again, pointing at the message. "Last night was amazing?" I asked, my voice rising. "That's you helping him practice?" She doubled down, insisting they were acting out scenarios, like this was some kind of twisted role-play exercise. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was the most ridiculous, insulting excuse I'd ever heard, and the fact that she thought I'd buy it made me even angrier. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I realized there was no saving this. There was no fixing what had been broken. I told her to pack her things and get out. She begged me to let her explain more, tears streaming down her face, but I couldn't listen to another word. I was done. As she packed her bags, the apartment felt suffocating. The place that had once been our home was now just a reminder of all the lies and betrayal. When she finally left, slamming the door behind her, I felt this strange mix of relief and devastation. I was free from her lies, but I was also alone, left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought we were building together. I sat in the silence, staring at the empty space where her things used to be, wondering how I'd missed the signs. But the truth was, I didn't miss them. I just didn't want to see them. I wanted to believe in the illusion of our perfect relationship, but now that illusion had been shattered, and all I was left with was the painful reality of betrayal. In the days that followed, the The apartment felt more like a tomb than a home. Every room echoed with memories I couldn't escape, her laugh in the kitchen, the smell of her shampoo lingering in the bathroom, our photos on the walls that I couldn't bring myself to take down. I kept replaying that night in my head, wondering if there was anything I could have done differently, any way I could have prevented it. But the truth is, there's no preparing for that kind of betrayal. It sneaks up on you, hollowing out your heart until all that's left is an emptiness you don't know how to fill. Friends reached out, offering sympathy and advice, but none of it felt real. They told me to move on, that I was better off without her, but their words felt like they were bouncing off a wall. I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't ready to accept that the woman I loved was just a chapter in my life that needed to end. Nights were the hardest. The silence felt louder in the dark, and I found myself staring at the ceiling, haunted by questions that had no answers. How long had she been lying to me? Was any of it real? Did she ever really love me, or was I just convenient? I tried to distract myself with work, with friends, even with meaningless hobbies I picked up just to keep my mind busy. But no matter what I did, the weight of her betrayal hung over me like a shadow I couldn't shake. I thought about texting her more times than I'd like to admit, just to hear her voice, just to ask her why. But I knew better. I knew that no answer she gave would satisfy me, and hearing her voice would only open wounds I was struggling to close. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, the sharp pain dulled into a quiet ache. I started to find comfort in the solitude, in the realization that I didn't need her to feel whole. I reconnected with old friends, rediscovered passions I'd put on hold, and began to rebuild the parts of myself I'd lost in the relationship. But no matter how much progress I made, a part of me still wondered if I'd ever fully trust someone again. Then, one day, months after it all fell apart, I ran into her. It was at the grocery store of all places, the most mundane setting for something that felt so monumental. She was standing in the produce aisle, laughing at something the guy next to her said. But it wasn't Tom. It was someone else entirely. A new guy with the same oblivious look I probably had when I was in his shoes. She saw me before I could turn away, and for a split second our eyes met. She smiled, that same smile she used to give me when everything was good, when I still believed in us. But now it felt hollow, like a mask she wore for whoever was next in line. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I just nodded and walked away, feeling a strange sense of closure wash over me. Seeing her with someone else didn't hurt the way I thought it would. Instead, it confirmed everything I already knew. She hadn't changed. She was still the same person, telling the same lies, probably using the same excuses. But I wasn't the same. I'd grown, I'd healed, and I'd learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and never look back. In the end, it didn't matter what her excuse was. The betrayal was enough. I realized you don't need to understand why someone lies to you. You just need to know when to walk away. I don't miss her. I miss the person I thought she was. But that person, she never existed.